My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 78 years old, and I have lived in the same small town of Willow Creek all my life. My late husband, Frank, built me a beautiful treehouse decades ago, our secret escape where we watched sunsets and dreamed together. That treehouse became my sanctuary after he passed away, a place filled with memories of love, laughter, and safety. But that safety was shattered the night I realized my own family wanted me gone. The smell of gasoline woke me up. It was sharp, suffocating, and wrong. I had fallen asleep in the treehouse, wrapped in Frank's old plaid blanket, after an exhausting day of arguments with my daughter-in-law, Jenna. When I opened my eyes, the shadows of two figures danced against the wooden walls, flickering from the flames they were trying to start beneath me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would rip through my chest. I peeked through the small window and under the moonlight, I saw them, my own granddaughter Lily and Jenna, holding matches and whispering as they doused the base with more fuel. "Make sure she doesn't wake up," Jenna hissed. "She won't," Lily muttered, her voice cold. Froze. My breath caught. This was no nightmare. They were going to burn me alive in the very place Frank built for me. The flames started to crackle, licking up the wooden support beams. My throat tightened as smoke began to seep in. I had seconds to decide: scream and let them know I was awake, or silently escape and catch them in their evil act. My hands trembled as I clutched Frank's old flashlight, but then I noticed something. Lily's phone had fallen to the ground. The screen lit up briefly, showing their messages. "Tonight we finish this. Once she's gone, the house is ours." My entire world shattered in that instant. The fire roared louder. I had no choice. I crawled to the small hatch Frank built as an emergency exit, a feature they clearly didn't know about. My knees burned as I slid down the rope ladder, hiding behind the tree trunk as the fire started to engulf the treehouse. I watched them laughing, believing they had succeeded. But they didn't know I was right there, listening, recording every word on my old phone. They didn't know that while the treehouse burned, I had already burned their plans. As the flames consumed the place I loved most, I whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong grandma to mess with." I backed away silently, clutching the evidence close to my chest. I didn't cry. Not yet. Had to move fast. I had to make sure they would never see what was coming. I had to play their game, only smarter. And as I slipped into the shadows of the night, my heart burning with both grief and vengeance, I made myself a promise. They would regret the day they ever tried to set me on fire. But little did I know, what I would uncover in the following days was far darker than their plan to kill me. There was a secret buried deep in my own family's history that would change everything. And I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. What would you do if the very people you raised tried to take your life? Stay with me because this is only the beginning. Backhand index pointing right before we continue. Tell me, where are you watching this from? Let me know in the comments because what happens next will leave you breathless. When the first light of dawn crept across Willow Creek, I sat at the kitchen table of my old farmhouse, staring at the phone in my hand. My fingers were still shaking from the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the flames swallowing the treehouse, hear the crackle of burning wood, and feel the sting of betrayal cutting deeper than the smoke ever could. My own granddaughter, my daughter-in-law, they had laughed while plotting my death. I pressed play on the recording I had taken while hiding behind the tree. "Once she's gone, the house is ours," Jenna's voice hissed again. Lily's laugh followed like a dagger. My breath caught in my throat, tears threatening to spill, but I wiped them away. Not now. I couldn't afford to be weak. Not when I had evidence that could ruin them. The house smelled faintly of the gasoline they had spilled on my shoes as I escaped. I stripped off my smoky clothes, stuffed them into a trash bag, and tucked it under the kitchen sink. My instincts told me to call the police immediately, but another voice inside me said, "Not yet. If you move too soon, they'll spin the story. They'll make you look crazy. Collect more, Eleanor. Collect everything." By the time the sun fully rose, I had already started my plan. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat down with Frank's old leather journal. He used to say, "When you're lost, write it out." The answers come to those who listen to their own words. I scribbled down everything from the night, every sound, every word, every detail of their faces in the firelight. Writing gave me clarity, and clarity gave me power. Around 8, my son David walked in. His eyes were puffy, like he hadn't slept well either. He glanced at me and said, "Mom, are you okay? You smell like smoke." I looked up at him, forcing a smile. "Oh, just an old lady's accident. Burned some leaves last night." He didn't buy it. I could see suspicion flicker in his eyes, but before he could ask more, Jenna walked in behind him, all sweetness and fake concern. "Eleanor, you're awake early. You didn't sleep in the treehouse, did you? That thing is so unstable." My heart clenched, but I kept my voice calm. "It's gone now. Burned to the ground." Jenna's face twitched, just for a second, before she plastered on a mask of shock. "Oh no. How awful." Lily came in moments later, avoiding my eyes, her phone clutched tight in her hand. I stood there, watching them pretend, and a strange calm settled over me. They think I'm weak. Let them. That afternoon, I walked into town to visit an old friend, Sheriff Thomas. He had known me since I was a girl, and he knew when I was lying. I didn't tell him everything, not yet. Instead, I asked casual questions about home insurance fraud cases. He gave me a curious look but answered anyway. "Why do you ask, Ellie?" "Oh, just curious. You never know who's capable of what these days," I said, smiling tightly. When I got back, I checked Jenna's car. The faint smell of gasoline still lingered in the trunk. I snapped photos discreetly. Evidence. Piece by piece, I was building my case. That night, I sat alone on the porch, staring at the empty space where my treehouse once stood. Anger burned inside me, but so did resolve. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for this family. How I had raised David alone after Frank died. How I had welcomed Jenna with open arms. How I had loved Lily as if she were my own child. And this was how they repaid me. The stars were bright above, and I whispered to Frank, "They tried to take me out, but I'm still here. And I'm going to make sure they never hurt anyone again." The next morning, I slipped into Jenna and Lily's room while they were out shopping. I knew it was risky, but I needed to know more. Under the bed, I found a folder stuffed with papers, bank statements, emails, and what chilled me to the bone, a forged document transferring my house to Jenna's name, signed with a perfect copy of my signature. My knees nearly buckled. This wasn't just about killing me. They had been planning this for months, maybe years. I tucked the papers into my cardigan and left the room as quietly as I had entered. My heart raced. Now I had proof they were not only trying to kill me but also stealing everything I had worked for. That night I locked my bedroom door. I slept with the folder and my phone under my pillow. Every creak in the house made my heart pound. Every whisper in the hallway sent chills down my spine. I knew they were plotting something else, maybe even sooner than I expected. And just as I started to drift off, I heard it. A soft click at my door. Someone was testing the lock. My eyes shot open. I held my breath. The handle jiggled, and then a low whisper. "She's still awake. Wait until she sleeps." My blood ran cold. I gripped my phone and quietly hit record again. The danger wasn't over. In fact, it was only beginning. You won't believe what happened the next night. Stay with me because things are about to get darker than ever. Backhand index pointing right. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you run or fight back? Comment below where you're watching from and get ready for the next chapter. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house had me on edge. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, even the ticking of the old clock on the wall. I stayed awake with my back pressed against the headboard, my phone clutched tight in my hand. The recording from earlier played in my head on a loop. "She's still awake. Wait until she sleeps." By dawn, my body felt heavy, but my mind was sharper than ever. I needed to act before they did. I couldn't wait for them to strike again. I had to control the narrative. As soon as the sun rose, I quietly packed a small bag. Inside went the forged documents, my recordings, and Frank's journal. I left through the back door, careful not to wake anyone, and walked straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Thomas was sipping his coffee when I walked in. "Eleanor, you're here early," he said, raising an eyebrow. I leaned on the counter, my voice low. "Tom, I need you to hold on to something for me. If anything happens to me, these are the answers." He frowned as I handed him the folder and a USB drive with the recordings. "Ellie, what's going on?" I forced a weak smile. "Just keep them safe. You'll know when to open it." Then I turned and walked out before he could ask more. Back home, Jenna greeted me with a fake smile. "Out for an early walk. You're full of energy lately." "I like to keep moving," I replied, keeping my tone calm. Lily barely looked at me, but I could feel her eyes burning into my back as I made my coffee. The tension in the house was suffocating. Every meal felt like sitting across from vipers waiting for the right moment to strike. David, my son, remained clueless, caught between the women he loved and the mother he thought was just being paranoid. That ignorance hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. Later that day I decided to test them. I pretended to be weak, complaining of chest pains and dizziness. Jenna immediately jumped into action, her voice dripping with false concern. "You should lie down, Eleanor. We'll take care of everything." I nodded, hiding a small camera in my room before laying on the bed. Hours later I watched the footage. While I pretended to sleep, Jenna and Lily rummaged through my drawers, whispering to each other. "She has to go soon," Lily hissed. "I know," Jenna whispered back. "Tonight, we'll make sure she doesn't wake up." My heart pounded as I listened. Tonight. They were planning to kill me tonight. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I moved silently through the house, planting small recorders in every room. I even placed a burner phone under the couch, set to record. I had one goal: gather enough proof to crush them completely. Night fell like a heavy curtain. I sat in my room, lights off, pretending to sleep. Around midnight, the door creaked open. I heard soft footsteps and the faint clinking of glass. The smell of something bitter filled the air. "They were here," Jenna whispered. "Pour it into her tea. She won't feel a thing." Lily giggled nervously. "After tonight, we'll be free." My heart raced, but I stayed still, my breathing steady. I heard the cup being placed on my nightstand. They whispered again and slipped out. The moment the door clicked shut, I sat up and picked up the cup with gloved hands. I poured the poisoned tea into a sealed jar and hid it. Then I replaced it with an untouched cup. I sat there trembling, waiting. Minutes later they returned, expecting to find me gone. I stayed perfectly still, playing dead. Jenna leaned over me, checking my pulse. I slowed my breathing. "She's not moving," she whispered. Lily let out a laugh that chilled my bones. Finally. They left, whispering about celebrating tomorrow. When the house fell silent, I opened my eyes and slipped out of bed. I retrieved the jar with the poisoned tea and my recordings, stuffing them into my bag. My plan was almost complete. By morning, they would face consequences they couldn't escape. But just as I reached for my keys, I heard something that made my blood run cold. David's voice downstairs, arguing with Jenna. "You said she was fine. Why are you celebrating?" Jenna hissed. "David, you need to choose, us or her." The argument escalated, and suddenly there was a loud crash. I froze at the top of the stairs, gripping the railing. David stormed out of the house, slamming the door, while Jenna stood trembling with rage. Lily rushed to her side, eyes wide. They didn't know I was watching. They didn't know I had everything. But as I turned to retreat back to my room, the floor creaked beneath me. Jenna's head snapped up. Her eyes locked on mine. "You're awake," she said slowly, her voice like poison. The air between us thickened. This was no longer a game of shadows. The war had begun. The night didn't end there. What happened next nearly cost me my life. Don't miss the next chapter. Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if your own family looked at you like prey? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. The house fell silent, but the silence was dangerous. Jenna stood at the bottom of the staircase, Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lily hovered behind her, clutching something small in her hand, a lighter. My fingers tightened on the banister. My heart pounded so loudly I feared they could hear it. "You're awake," Jenna repeated, stepping forward slowly. "You should be sleeping, Eleanor. You need rest at your age." "I've rested enough," I said, my voice steady even though my legs trembled. "I know everything. You two have made a grave mistake." Lily scoffed. "Oh, stop acting tough, Grandma. You think anyone's going to believe you? You're old, forgetful. You imagine things." Her cruel laugh echoed through the hall. But I stepped down slowly, each footfall deliberate. "Imagine this. Your voices are recorded, your plans are documented, and the sheriff already has a copy. If anything happens to me, you both will rot in prison." For a moment, Jenna's mask slipped. Her eyes widened, but then she smirked. "You're bluffing." "Try me," I said coldly. The tension snapped like a brittle twig. Jenna lunged toward me, but I grabbed the nearest lamp and swung it, knocking her off balance. Lily screamed and ran to her side. I didn't wait to see what they would do next. I bolted out the front door and into the night. The cold air stung my lungs as I ran down the dirt path toward the sheriff's office. But halfway there I heard footsteps pounding behind me. They were chasing me. My heart pounded harder. I ducked into the woods, weaving between the trees until I reached the edge of the property. The moon lit the empty road, and I sprinted until my legs burned. By the time I reached the sheriff's office, the sun was just starting to rise. Sheriff Thomas opened the door, his eyes widening at the sight of me, breathless and shaking. I shoved the poisoned tea jar, recordings, and documents into his hands. "They tried to kill me. Twice," I gasped. Thomas quickly ushered me inside, locking the door behind us. "Stay here, Ellie. I'll handle this." But I wasn't safe yet. While Thomas gathered deputies to investigate, I stayed in his office, my body trembling as exhaustion finally caught up. My mind raced with fear and anger. They had tried to burn me alive. They had poisoned me. And now they would stop at nothing to silence me. Hours later, Thomas returned with grim news. "Your house was searched. Jenna and Lily are gone." My stomach dropped. Gone. Where could they have gone so quickly? Then I remembered, the cabin by the lake, the one Frank and I used to visit. They must have gone there to hide. I stood, determination replacing fear. "Take me there." Thomas hesitated, but I insisted. "I'm not hiding anymore. I'm ending this." We drove through the winding roads until the lake cabin came into view. The place looked abandoned, but smoke rose faintly from the chimney. Thomas signaled for silence as we approached. Inside, voices drifted out through the window. "We need to finish this before she talks," Jenna hissed. "We should have made sure she burned last time," Lily said. Rage surged through me. They were still planning, still scheming. Thomas and the deputies burst in, guns drawn. Jenna screamed, and Lily tried to run, but they were quickly restrained. As they were handcuffed, Jenna spat venom at me. "This isn't over, Eleanor. You think you've won." I stepped forward, my voice sharp as steel. "No, Jenna. You've lost everything. And so has your daughter." They were taken away, but I knew this wasn't the end. Trials take time. Lies can twist the truth. I had to stay vigilant. I had to protect myself from whatever allies they might still have. Back home, I stood in front of the ashes of my treehouse. Tears streamed down my face, not for the building, but for the love and trust one had lost. Frank's words echoed in my heart. "You're stronger than you think, Ellie. The war wasn't over yet." They might be behind bars, but their hatred burned on, and I could feel it, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And that moment came sooner than I expected. Because the very next night, I found an envelope slid under my door. Inside was a single photograph of me standing by the ashes, with a message scrawled on the back. "We're not done. This was only the beginning. What happened after this will shock you even more. Stay with me for the next chapter." Backhand index pointing right. Tell me, would you have confronted them or fled the town? Comment below where you're watching from and brace yourself for what comes next. I sat in my kitchen holding that photo. The words were not done burned into my mind. My hands trembled as I stared at the picture. They were in jail. I had seen them taken away with my own eyes. How could they have sent this? Unless someone else was helping them. The thought chilled me to my bones. I had underestimated how deep their hatred ran. They weren't just after my house. They were after me, my very existence. I locked every door and window, drawing the curtains tight, but the feeling of being watched never left. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow outside made my heart pound. The next day, I drove into town to speak with Sheriff Thomas again. How is it possible they're still threatening me if they're locked up? I demanded. Thomas frowned and explained that Jenna had made bail, using funds that were likely hidden away long before the arrests. Lily was still in juvenile detention, but Jenna was free, and angrier than ever. Stay close to home, Ellie, Thomas warned. We'll keep an eye on you, but don't do anything reckless. But I couldn't just sit and wait for her to strike. That's not who I am. That's not who Frank raised me to be. I began watching my surroundings carefully. The next few days, I noticed the same black SUV parked across from my house, never too close but always there. Sometimes I saw a figure inside. Sometimes it was empty, like a ghost waiting to pounce. One night I decided to set a trap. I left my house lights off and pretended to sleep, but I stayed hidden in the shadows of the hallway, clutching Frank's old hunting rifle. Hours passed. At midnight, I heard the faint crunch of footsteps on the gravel outside. My heart raced. The front door handle rattled. The door creaked open slowly. A shadow slipped inside. I raised the rifle, steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. When the figure stepped into the light of the moon streaming through the window, I saw her. Jenna, dressed in black, holding a can of gasoline in one hand and a lighter in the other. You should have stayed quiet, Eleanor, she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. Take one more step and I swear you won't make it out of here, I said, my voice cold and unwavering. For a moment, we stood locked in a deadly stare. Then she smirked, slowly backing toward the door. This isn't over, she hissed, retreating into the night. I called Thomas immediately, but by the time deputies arrived, she was gone. No trace, no footprints, no evidence, just the lingering smell of gasoline on the porch. The next day I decided to take control. I visited the bank and moved every asset I owned into a trust under a friend's name. I contacted a lawyer and rewrote my will, leaving nothing to Jenna or Lily. If they wanted to destroy me for my house, they'd find out the house was no longer theirs to claim. I also installed cameras all around my property, hidden in places only I knew. Every night I watched the feeds. Sometimes I saw nothing. Sometimes I caught glimpses of that black SUV. But the real blow came when David, my son, confronted me. Mom, why are you doing this? Jenna says you're framing her. She says you're losing your mind. My heart broke. David, open your eyes. She tried to kill me. He rubbed his face, torn between the woman he married and the mother who raised him. I don't know what to believe anymore. Those words cut deeper than any knife. But I didn't stop. Couldn't. I handed him the recordings and the photos, telling him to listen when he was ready. Then I sent him away, because I knew Jenna would use him as a pawn if she got the chance. That night I heard something strange, rustling in the woods behind my house. I checked the cameras and saw movement near the spot where the treehouse once stood. My heart stopped when I saw a figure crouched there, pouring something onto the ground. I grabbed my phone and zoomed in. It wasn't Jenna. It was a man, tall and broad, wearing a black hoodie. He looked directly at the camera, then disappeared into the trees. Who was he? Was Jenna working with someone else? My mind spun with questions. I saved the footage, knowing it was another piece of the puzzle. The following morning, an envelope appeared on my porch. Inside was another photo, but this time it was of David tied to a chair, fear in his eyes. On the back a message. Trade the house or lose him. My knees nearly buckled. They had my son. I called Thomas, frantic, but something deep inside me told me not to wait for help. This was personal. They wanted me broken. They wanted me desperate. But they didn't know one thing. I was done being the hunted. I packed a small bag, slipped Frank's old revolver into my coat, and whispered to myself, if it's a war they want, it's a war they'll get. The night I went to save my son, everything changed. Because when I reached the place where they were keeping him, what I found was darker than any nightmare I'd imagined. The fight for my life, and my son's, was about to begin. Stay with me for the next chapter. Backhand index pointing right, tell me, would you risk everything to save someone who doubted you? Comment where you're watching from and get ready, the storm is only beginning. The note's directions led me deep into the outskirts of Willow Creek, to an abandoned lumber mill that had been shut down for over 20 years. The building loomed like a dark skeleton against the moonlight, its broken windows glinting like eyes. My heart pounded, but I gripped Frank's revolver tighter. I wasn't going there as a victim. I was going as a fighter. Every step crunched on the gravel as I approached. The smell of gasoline hung faintly in the air, a cruel reminder of what they'd tried to do to me in the treehouse. Inside, the mill was cold and eerily quiet, except for the faint sound of muffled crying. David. I followed the sound, moving slowly, every nerve on edge. Then I saw him, tied to a chair in the middle of the room. His face bruised, his eyes wide when he saw me. "Mom," he gasped. "Shoo," I whispered, rushing to his side. But before I could untie him, a shadow stepped out from behind the stacks of old lumber. It wasn't Jenna. It was the man from the camera, the one who had stared into the lens. His face was hard, expressionless. "You came alone," he said, his voice deep and cold. "Who are you?" I demanded, keeping my gun steady. He smirked. "Let's just say Jenna knows people who finish what she starts. Hand over the deed to the house, and you both walk out alive." "I don't have the deed," I said, my voice firm. "And even if I did, you'd still kill us." For a moment, his smirk faltered. Then he lunged. I fired a warning shot into the air, the sound echoing through the mill like thunder. He stopped, glaring at me. "You've got guts, old lady," he growled. "More than you'll ever have," I snapped. Suddenly, I heard another voice from the shadows. "Enough." Jenna stepped into the light, her face twisted with rage. "You should have died in that treehouse, Eleanor. You should have burned like the rest of your dreams." My blood boiled. "You think burning me will make you strong? You're nothing without lies and fear." She laughed, bitter and cruel. "Strong? Well, smart. When you're gone, David will side with me. He always does." David's voice cracked from the chair. "You're wrong, Jenna. I've seen everything. Mom was right about you." Her face darkened. "Shut up," she screamed, pulling a lighter from her pocket. "We'll burn this place to the ground, with all of you in it." Before she could strike, I fired again, this time at the ground near her feet. Sparks flew from the lighter as it slipped from her hands. The man lunged at me again, but I swung a heavy piece of wood, knocking him to the floor. Adrenaline surged as I rushed to David, cutting him free. "Run, David!" shouted. Together we bolted for the exit, Jenna screaming behind us. Flames caught on the dry wood piles. Whether by accident or design, the building was going up in fire fast. We made it outside just as the deputies arrived, sirens blaring. Sheriff Thomas stormed in with his team, dragging out the man in cuffs and restraining Jenna as she thrashed and screamed. "You'll regret this, Eleanor. You'll regret it," she howled as they shoved her into the back of the police car. The fire consumed the mill, the heat so intense it felt like the air itself was burning. David collapsed beside me, shaking. "Mom. Sorry. I should have believed you." I hugged him tightly, my voice trembling but strong. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." But as I watched Jenna being driven away, I knew it wasn't over. She had connections. She had hate. And hate doesn't die in handcuffs. I could feel it, the storm wasn't passing. It was only gathering strength. The next morning, the news spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Everyone knew what Jenna had done. Everyone whispered about the woman who had survived murder attempts and fought back. But I stayed quiet, watching, waiting. Because even from behind bars, Jenna's shadow loomed over my house. Days passed, and peace seemed to settle. But I didn't trust it. I checked the cameras, double-locked my doors, and slept with the revolver by my side. David stayed with me, helping rebuild the damage to my heart and home. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I found another envelope on my porch. This one was different, sealed with a wax stamp I didn't recognize. Inside was a single note. "You think she's the only enemy you have? The fire wasn't her idea." My hand shook. There was someone else. Someone even more dangerous than Jenna pulling the strings. I stared at the note, my heart pounding with dread and determination. Whoever they were, they had just declared war. "You won't believe who's behind it all. The truth will turn everything upside down." Backhand index pointing right. Tell me, if you were in my place, how far would you go to uncover the truth? Comment where you're watching from and brace yourself for the next chapter. It's about to explode. The note burned in my hand like a live coal. The fire wasn't her idea. Those words echoed in my head over and over. If Jenna wasn't the mastermind, then who was? Who hated me enough to manipulate her, to orchestrate every attack, to send strangers to my property? My instincts told me this enemy was close, someone I'd never suspect. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch with the revolver in my lap, staring into the dark woods. The air was thick, still, as if holding its breath. Around midnight, the cameras picked up movement. A figure in a hood circled the property, just out of reach of the porch light. I aimed my rifle but held back. I needed to know who they were. The next morning I went straight to Sheriff Thomas with the footage. He studied it carefully, frowning. "This isn't Jenna's hired man. This is someone else. See how he moves. Like he knows this place." The realization hit me hard. Someone I know. I spent the day digging through old memories, faces from my past flashing before me. Neighbors, relatives, friends. Who had reason to hate me? By afternoon I got my answer without even searching. David approached me with an envelope he said was left in the mailbox. Inside was a photo from 30 years ago. Me, Frank, and his younger brother, Charles. On the back, scrawled in black ink, "You stole everything from me. Now it's my turn." My knees nearly buckled. Charles, Frank's brother. He had disappeared decades ago after a bitter family dispute over land. Everyone thought he'd left town for good. But he hadn't. He had been waiting, watching, plotting revenge. I showed the note to Thomas, and his jaw tightened. If it's Charles, he's dangerous. He knows this land better than anyone. We need to find him before he finds you. That night I fortified the house. David helped me board up the windows and set extra locks. But fear crept into every corner. I knew Charles wouldn't just attack blindly. He was calculating. He'd wait until I felt safe, then strike. Just after midnight it happened. The power went out, plunging the house into darkness. The cameras went dead. My breath caught as I heard the crunch of boots on gravel, slow and deliberate. "Ellie!" A voice called from the darkness, smooth but venomous. "You took what was mine. Frank chose you over family. You think you can keep that house, that land, that life?" I gripped the revolver, my hands trembling. "Charles, Frank is dead. This house isn't yours. None of this is yours." A dark laugh echoed through the night. "Oh, but it will be. When you're gone, everything will be as it should." Suddenly, a flaming object crashed through the window, shattering glass and setting the curtains ablaze. I grabbed the fire extinguisher while David beat down the flames with a blanket. The house filled with smoke, and through the haze, I saw Charles standing on the porch with a gas can in one hand and a lighter in the other. "Get out here, Ellie," he roared. "Face me like you faced her." I stepped into the doorway, revolver raised. You want to burn me. You'll have to look me in the eyes when you do it. For a moment he hesitated, his face twisting with rage and something almost like pain. Then he flicked the lighter. Flames danced, and the porch began to catch. David pulled me back, yelling, "Mom, we have to move." But I didn't back down. I fired a warning shot, hitting the wooden beam beside him. Charles flinched, dropping the lighter. Deputies, alerted by Thomas, who had been monitoring the area, swarmed in from the shadows. They tackled Charles to the ground as he screamed, "This isn't over, Eleanor. You can't stop what's coming." The deputies dragged him away, but his words clung to me like smoke. You can't stop what's coming. What did he mean? Was there something else, someone else behind him? The house smelled of smoke again, my walls blackened, my lungs burning. But I was alive. David hugged me, shaking. "It's over, Mom. It has to be." Yet deep down I knew it wasn't. Charles wasn't working alone. His last words weren't just a threat, they were a warning. The next morning, as the sun rose over my damaged home, another envelope appeared on the porch. No photo this time, just a single line written in red. "We're already inside." My blood ran cold. I turned slowly, scanning every corner of the house. Someone had been here while I slept. And then, from the hallway, I heard the faint creak of a floorboard that wasn't mine. The real enemy was closer than ever. What I found hiding in my own house that night will chill you to the bone. Don't miss the next chapter. Backhand index pointing right. Tell me, what would you do if you realized the enemy was already inside your walls? Comment where you're watching from and prepare yourself, because the worst is yet to come. The creak of the floorboard froze me in place. David was still asleep in the guest room, unaware of the danger creeping around us. I gripped Frank's revolver and moved slowly toward the hallway, every step measured, my breath shallow. The early morning light barely filtered through the smoke-stained curtains, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling but firm. "Silence." I crept closer, my eyes scanning the walls and corners. Then I saw it. The attic door was slightly ajar, the pull string swaying gently as if someone had just climbed up. My heart hammered against my ribs. Whoever left that note was still here, hiding above me. I slowly backed into the kitchen and grabbed my phone, dialing Sheriff Thomas with shaking fingers. "Tom," I whispered, "he's inside. Someone's in my attic." "Stay put, Eleanor. We're on our way," he said firmly. "Do not engage unless you have to." But the line went dead before I could answer. Static. No signal. My heart sank. They'd cut the power, and now they'd jammed the line. I was on my own again. I climbed a few steps up the attic ladder, my revolver aimed. The air up there was thick with dust, but I heard it, breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing that wasn't mine. I flicked on the flashlight. In the far corner, crouched like an animal, was a man I didn't recognize. He was gaunt, his clothes torn, his eyes wild. In his hand, he held a long knife that glinted in the beam of my light. "You don't belong here," I said, my voice low. He smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. "Oh, I belong more than you think. Charles sent me. But even he doesn't know the full plan." "What plan?" I demanded, keeping the gun steady. He stood slowly, his frame towering over me even from across the attic. "The plan to erase you. Take everything. You think it's about the house? Well, it's about what's buried under it." The words hit me like a punch. Buried under my house. Frank never told me about anything like that. I wanted to ask more, but he lunged. Fired. The shot missed, splintering the wooden beam behind him. He charged, knocking the gun from my hand. We struggled, rolling across the dusty floor. His knife nicked my arm, but I kicked hard, sending him crashing into the wall. I scrambled for the revolver, my heart pounding. He came at me again, but this time I fired point-blank. The shot echoed through the house. He fell, the knife clattering to the floor. Blood pooled beneath him, his breathing shallow. "You have no idea what's coming," he rasped before going still. The deputies arrived minutes later, finding me trembling but alive. They removed the body and swept the house, but the damage was done. Someone had managed to get inside without me knowing. Sheriff Thomas looked grim. "Eleanor, this is bigger than we thought. Charles may be locked up, but he has allies. They're after something more." When they left, I collapsed onto the couch, clutching my bleeding arm. David sat beside me, pale. "Mom, what did he mean? What's buried under the house?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But I'm going to find out." Over the next few days, I searched the property with a metal detector and Frank's old maps of the land. One spot behind the house, near where the treehouse once stood, gave a strange reading. I dug until my hands blistered. A few feet down I hit something solid, an old metal chest. Inside was a stack of documents, deeds, and a small leather pouch filled with gold coins. There was also a letter from Frank, yellowed with age. My hands shook as I read it. "Ellie, if you're reading this, it means the secret is out. The land we live on isn't just ours. It's sitting on an unclaimed fortune left by my grandfather. I kept it hidden because I knew greed would destroy everything. Protect it, Ellie. Protect it with your life." Tears blurred my vision. This was what they were after. The house wasn't just a house. It was the key to a fortune. That night, as I hid the chest in a safer place, I heard another noise outside. When I looked through the window, I saw a figure standing by the burned treehouse, watching me. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. My blood ran cold. This wasn't over. Whoever was behind this wasn't stopping. Not until they got what they wanted. As I turned away from the window, a brick crashed through it, landing on the floor with a note tied to it. "The fire will finish what it started. Soon." I knew then the final battle was coming. And it would happen on my land, on my terms. The night of reckoning was about to begin. What happened next will leave you breathless. Stay with me for the next chapter. Backhand and pointing right, tell me, would you fight to protect what's yours, even if it meant facing death? Comment where you're watching from. Next chapter is coming and it's going to burn. The note tied to that brick was the last warning I needed. The fire will finish what it started. They weren't bluffing anymore. This was a declaration of war. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside made me grip Frank's revolver tighter. David wanted us to leave, to run away and hide. But this was my land, my home, and Frank's legacy. I wasn't going to let them win. At dawn, I buried the chest with the coins and deeds deeper than before, under a false section of the old storm shelter. No one would find it except me. Then I called Sheriff Thomas and told him everything about the chest, the fortune, and the letter from Frank. "This explains why they won't stop," Thomas said. "They're not just after your house. They're after the gold. And they'll burn everything to get it," I said. He nodded grimly. "We'll increase patrols, Ellie. But be ready. These people won't wait forever." By evening, the air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. David stayed close, helping me secure the house with every lock, board, and camera we had. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't stop them. They had already shown they could get inside whenever they wanted. Just after midnight, I heard the first sign. The distant growl of engines. Multiple vehicles pulling up the road. My stomach dropped. Through the window, I saw the black SUV, along with 2 other trucks, parking just beyond the gate. Figures spilled out, carrying cans of gasoline, ropes, and weapons. David grabbed the phone to call 911, but the line was dead again. "They cut it," he whispered, his face pale. We moved quickly, dousing the porch and walls with water, while I kept my revolver ready. The figures approached slowly, fanning out like hunters surrounding prey. One of them shouted, "Give us the chest, Eleanor, and maybe we'll let you live." My voice cut through the night. "Come and take it if you dare." The first bottle of gasoline smashed against the side of the house, flames sparking where they had doused. David and I fought to put it out, coughing through the smoke. But they kept throwing more, each bottle exploding against the wood. Fire licked the walls, the heat unbearable. Through the flames I saw him, Charles. He had escaped custody somehow. His face twisted with fury, leading the mob. "You should have burned in that treehouse, Ellie. Tonight you'll burn for real." Anger surged through me, burning hotter than the flames. "You'll have to kill me first, Charles." The fire roared higher as they circled closer. David and I retreated to the storm shelter, dragging the chest with us as the last line of defense. But before we could lock it, a shadow lunged, grabbing me by the arm. It was Charles. His eyes blazed as he tried to wrench the revolver from my hand. We struggled, the fire raging around us, embers raining down. "This is mine," he screamed. "No, Charles," I growled, forcing the gun between us. "This was never yours." The shot rang out. Charles staggered back, clutching his chest, his eyes wide in disbelief. He collapsed to the ground as the other attackers hesitated, their courage faltering. Sirens wailed in the distance. Sheriff Thomas and his deputies were finally arriving. The mob scattered like rats, fleeing into the night. Thomas and his men stormed the property, pulling me and David out of the burning house. The flames consumed the walls, but the storm shelter and the chest remained intact. Charles lay lifeless near the porch. His reign of terror finally ended. As the house smoldered to ashes, I stood shaking but unbroken. "They won't get it," I whispered to Thomas. "They'll never get what's buried here." "You're safe now, Ellie," he said. But I wasn't sure. Even as the sun rose over the charred ruins, I knew the fight wasn't done. Somewhere out there the rest of them were still watching, still waiting. That afternoon I received one last message, slipped under the police barricade. "You may have killed him, but the fire isn't out. We'll finish it in the end." My blood ran cold. The final confrontation hadn't come yet. The storm shelter still held the fortune, and they were coming back for it. The last battle for my life and Frank's legacy would be the most dangerous of all. Everything ends in the next chapter. Backhand index pointing right. Tell me, would you stand and fight or walk away forever? Comment where you're watching from, because the finale will leave you speechless. The morning after the attack felt like the calm before a hurricane. My house was a skeleton of charred beams, but I stood tall among the ashes. They thought they'd break me, burn me out, force me to surrender. Instead, they'd only fueled the fire inside me. Sheriff Thomas insisted on relocating me under protective watch, but I refused. "If I leave, they win," I told him. "This is my land. This is where I make my stand." He reluctantly agreed but left 2 deputies posted nearby, hidden from view. David wanted to take me far away, to start over somewhere new. "Mom, they won't stop. It's not worth dying over." I cupped his face in my hands. "This isn't about the gold, David. It's about my life, my dignity. I won't run from the ghosts of this land." All day, I prepared for what I knew was coming. I secured the storm shelter, burying traps around its entrance, rigging alarms with bells and fishing wire Frank once used. I even hid small cameras that streamed to my phone. If they came, I'd see them before they saw me. By nightfall, the wind howled through the ruins of my house. The moon shone pale and cold over the property. I sat inside the storm shelter, revolver loaded, lantern flickering. David stayed with me, his hands shaking but his resolve strong. Then we heard it, the low rumble of engines. More than one. They were back. The cameras lit up on my phone, showing figures approaching from all sides, armed with torches, ropes, and weapons. Their leader stepped into the moonlight, and my blood froze. It wasn't Charles this time. It was a woman, tall, with sharp eyes and a cruel smile. "Who are you?" I shouted from the doorway. "I'm the one Charles worked for," she said coldly. "You killed him, but he was just the start. That chest belongs to me. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you live." I aimed the revolver at her. "You'll have to walk over my dead body." She laughed, signaling her men forward. Flames erupted around the shelter as they tried to smoke us out. The heat became unbearable, smoke choking the air. David coughed, fear in his eyes. "Mom, what do we do?" Follow the plan, I whispered. As the first man stepped on the hidden wire, the bells clanged and my traps sprung. Boards with nails, cans of oil spilling to make the ground slick, forcing them to stumble and fall. The chaos gave me just enough time to fire 2 warning shots, scattering them further. The woman snarled, "Burn them out. Burn it all." But before they could advance, sirens erupted from the road. Sheriff Thomas and his deputies surged in, lights blinding the attackers. "Drop your weapons," he shouted. The mob hesitated, then scattered into the woods, but the woman stood her ground. "This isn't over," she hissed, glaring at me. "There are more of us. You can't fight us all." I stepped forward, my revolver steady. "Maybe not. But I'll fight every single one who comes for me." Thomas tackled her as she lunged, cuffing her while the rest of his men rounded up the attackers. The fire was extinguished, and for the first time in weeks, the night felt quiet. When dawn broke, I stood on the scorched earth, watching the deputies haul the woman away. She glared back at me, spitting one last threat. "The fire never dies." I looked at the rising sun, breathing deeply. Maybe not. But neither do I. Over the next few weeks, the land healed slowly. The charred remains of my house were cleared, and the shelter remained untouched, guarding Frank's secret. David stayed by my side, helping me rebuild, finally understanding the strength of the woman who raised him. When the new house was finished, I planted a single tree where the old treehouse once stood. Under its roots, I buried the leather pouch of gold, knowing it was safer hidden from the world. Standing under the tree's shade, I whispered to Frank, "I protected it, love. I protected us." The attacks stopped. The threats faded. But I never let my guard down. The fire might never die completely, but neither would the strength in my heart. I walked back into my new home, locking the door behind me. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. The war was over. I had won. And to anyone listening to my story, remember this. When the world tries to burn you down, stand tall. Let the flames shape you, not destroy you. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched you, tell me. Where are you watching from? Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of courage, because your story matters too.